Welcome to the Earning Freedom Podcast. I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com and prisonprofessor.com, and I am back again with another episode in our series on the Mastermind program. As I've done in the previous episodes, I'm going to begin with a very simple recap because it is my goal and my mission to really inspire as many people as I can who are serving time in prison or who are living inside some type of a struggle, whether they're required to be going to some type of school for at-risk youth, or really it's just anybody who is using the Earning Freedom Mastermind program. I want to connect with you. I want to help you understand the strategies that empowered me through 26 years in prison, because I absolutely know that if they work for me, they can work for you. And they're not my strategies, as I've said numerous times in the past in previous episodes, and I will continue to say again, these are episodes that I learned from masterminds that really began for me with Socrates, continued on with lessons I learned from Mahatma Gandhi, from Nelson Mandela, from Viktor Frankl, from Martin Luther King, and even from contemporary business leaders that include many well-known business leaders like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Jack Welch or others. And all of this information I contain and include in the Mastermind coursework. In fact, I just got a copy of the book right here that I don't know if you can see it on the screen. It might come in reverse, but this is the actual Mastermind course. And it is available in your institution by download with a PDF, but if your families want to follow along with you, they can easily enough get the booklet from Amazon.com. And they can learn about these same strategies that masterminds have been teaching for thousands of years, and we all can learn that it's never too soon and it's never too late to begin sowing seeds for a better life. This is what worked for me through prison. This is what can work for you. To give you a very quick recap again, it all begins with establishing the values by which we profess to live. In my case, it was a focus on education, a focus on contributing to society, and a focus on building a strong support network. That was the essence that caused me to really change my life when I was starting on this journey inside of a federal prison. And then it was setting clearly defined goals within each of those value categories. Otherwise, it'd be very easy to say I was focused on education, contribution, and building a support network unless I clearly defined it by which way I could measure whether I was on track or not. And in my case, those goals that I set started off with a university degree. That's what was going to determine whether I was educated or not. Contributions was, for me, going to be whether I was publishing, creating work that would transcend the prison walls and other people in society could use it to understand what I consider to be one of the greatest social injustices of our time. I told you that Gandhi was one of the mastermind mentors of mine or influencers of mine, and I'll always remember a quote that he said. He said, "Be the change that you want to see in the world." And one of the reasons that I wanted to reform our nation's criminal justice system is because I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see in the world. Since I believed that our nation's wrong-spirited commitment to mass incarceration was one of the greatest social injustices of our time, I wanted to do something about it. And so publishing and learning about it and reading about it and writing about it in a manner that didn't seem as if I was some type of a bitter guy in prison, but rather somebody who really wanted to make something better. That was my path. So publishing all of my publishing work that I've written under my own name was to design in such a way to help more people understand prisons, the people they hold, and strategies to emerge from prison successfully. And the last goal that I set was to find 10 people that I didn't know and that didn't know me, and to persuade those people to believe in me. So that's what I'm encouraging you to do. Set your values, set your goals, and that is like the prerequisite that will launch you on this new path of masterminds. And that means you've got to, as the next lesson in the course showed, you got to have the right attitude. And I measured the right attitude by having 100% commitment to success as the individual defines success. 2, it was having an aspiration, making sure that you can see how you wanted to emerge, what you wanted to become. 3, take the incremental action steps, the action steps that'll take you from where you are to where you want to go. 4, as I discussed in the previous video, have a very strong accountability metric, a very strong accountability log. And in this module, now that we're here, I'm telling you this is about awareness. And as I mentioned at the end of the previous video, awareness is special because when you are on this deliberate path, when you are pursuing success in a very deliberate way, you're going to have a higher level of energy, a higher level of discipline, because you're going to recognize how each step leads you to the next step. Okay? So when I talk about awareness, it's that knowledge that you can find opportunities that are available to everybody else, but most people don't see them because they're not on this deliberate, disciplined path. That's what masterminds do. That's what I learned from people who said, I am going to create something or do something that's of value to other people, or I am going to look at a problem and I am going to solve it. They become aware. They're so into this past, this passion of theirs to build something better, to build something new, that they never miss an opportunity. In fact, not only do they not miss opportunities, but they see opportunities that are available to everybody else, but not everybody sees them. Not everybody can see those opportunities, and that's why so few people are really able to muster the energy or the discipline that's necessary to really overcome and really reject the environment that seems to extinguish hope and instead focus on success and on building something better. I'll tell you, I walked into a prison and I was doing some teaching inside of a prison. I've been out now for since August of 2013, and frequently when I'm not working and building my own career, I go into jails and prisons and try and inspire the guys inside to see that they can become something better, because I know it's very hard to see that when you're living separated from society. It's and you're waiting for a sufficient number of calendar pages to turn before you can go home. I know it's really hard to sustain that level of energy and discipline. And so I always thought it's helpful. It was always helpful for me to see people come in and share their success and what worked for them, and that's what I try and do. But there's a funny thing that happens when I go in there. A lot of times people will say, hey, that fool is never in prison. And I know that when they're telling me that, they're like trying to give an insult or something, because maybe I don't look hard enough or whatever the case is. But the reality is that was always a plan, to come back to society strong with my dignity intact and be able to function in any environment, have nobody even assume, not one person assume, oh, that guy has spent so much of his life in prison. And that's what I try to teach people. But some people in prison and in confinement, they're not aware of how their adjustment inside is setting them up for challenges or lessening their likelihood for success upon release. In fact, I was in one prison and a guy asked me, he said, well, what can you do for me if I get out of here? And I said, well, what would you like me to do for you? And his answer just about, was consistent with what I think everybody wants. He said, I want you to get me a job. And I said, I can get you a job as long as you make a 100% commitment to living a law-abiding life as a contributing citizen. If you want to bring that kind of value, I know I can get you a job, because I interact with employers all the time. In fact, one of my earlier videos, you saw I had the CEO of an organization, of a company that oversees more than $20 billion in government revenues. And so, if I tap him for jobs, it's easy, as long as I'm making validating the guy as somebody who's really gone through the Mastermind program, somebody who's absolutely focused on success. And I asked, so I said to the guy, yeah, I can get you a job. And then his answer just really revealed how out of touch he was with the world. He said, well, I still want to be a gang member. And, that's the level of disconnect that exists in so many prisons. A lot of guys, and then I'd question him about it, try and question him. I said, well, how is that going to be consistent with with me going to an employer and trying to go to bat for you? And his response was, he says, look, I'm not going to do anything wrong, but the gang members, they're my homies, and I want to hang with them, and that's where my heart is. And I said, well, if that's where your heart is, you've got to understand how prospective employers are going to see that. And that was the big disconnect for him. He was so out of touch. He was so unaware of how his behavior and how his relationships could relate to potential employment. And I don't know that I ever had him cross that hurdle, because, he actually left the class that I was teaching because he said he didn't want to find a job or didn't want to do something if it meant that he had to leave his gang. But remember what this whole program is about. It's about making a 100% commitment to success. It's not success as determined by the prison environment. It's success as measured in real society. Being able to own a home, being able to buy a car, being able to go into a bank and have people shake your hand and say, welcome, nice to see you again. Or go into any type of business establishment and have people see you as just another citizen, somebody who is trying to do well for his family, for his community, for his life. And that's really the message that I try to convey, is the importance of being aware of how your behavior, how your adjustment, the words that you use, the people you associate with, everything is how all of that relates and influences opportunities. Because every decision we make, it comes with an opportunity cost. Either it's advancing you towards your goals or it's sending you backwards. And I want anybody who's going through the Mastermind program to have the same level of success that I have had. And I am telling you, this is the strategy that worked for me, to be 100% committed to building a successful life. Well, but the nice thing about awareness is not only when you're on this path, not only do you become aware of opportunities that you can seize if you truly want to embrace the Mastermind concept, but the world becomes aware of you. And you've probably seen it happen before, where you're doing well and maybe your supervisor tries to give you some type of extra amount of liberty or some type of new opportunity that will advance your call or whatever it is you're doing, and you feel good about it because somebody else is recognizing that you're doing well. And that's just a human nature thing. But if you are not on this path, you make it less likely for the world to become vested in your success. And that's what this whole mastermind cycle and circle is all about. It's about building a sustainable path that will ensure that you are more successful than anybody anticipates that you should be. I absolutely know that's what worked for me when I was inside. I was always obsessed and always focused with building a life that few people thought would be possible for somebody serving multiple decades in prison. But because I was on this path, I could create my own opportunities. Why? Because I was aware of them. They weren't special to me. Those opportunities were not special to me. They were available to everybody else in prison. But not everybody else saw them because they weren't on a deliberate path, and so they missed out. And because I was aware, and because I made a 100% commitment to success, and because I took those incremental action steps and held myself accountable. In fact, I didn't only hold myself accountable, I invited those in society hold me accountable. And the more people who came to know how hard I was working to prepare for success, the more people came into my life and wanted to help. And that's what you will find. If you're on this path, you will find people who truly want to help you succeed. And since I feel so passionately and so strongly about wanting to give that message to everybody who's going through the Earning Freedom Mastermind program, why? Because I want them to be able to come out and have jobs waiting for them, income opportunities waiting for them. I can't tell you how many people I wrote about in the various books that I wrote that left prison thinking that they would never come back. In fact, I've never known anybody who left prison and said, I'm coming back. Everybody I know who left prison said, there's no way I will ever come back. But unfortunately, our prisons are filled primarily with repeat people who've recidivists, people who've gotten out of prison and for one reason or other came back to prison. And I'm absolutely convinced that if I can help more people understand these mastermind principles, we will have an opportunity of really moving the needle, really changing the way our criminal justice system operates so that more people who go through it emerge as contributing, law-abiding citizens with extraordinary opportunities for success. And if you're looking for that type of success, then you got to realize it's not going to happen by accident, and it's certainly not going to happen with happy talk. You have to totally move forward in a deliberate, passionate way to truly hit success. And when you're after that, that's when your life changes. That's when you become aware. And so in the second half of this video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about both of these concepts of awareness. But first, again, since I'm doing a video, I can't really break it and start again. So I'm just going to give this sponsorship message right here in the middle of this video. And I always do it just extemporaneously because I'm authentic and I'm true. So I want to thank Golden State Lumber. It is a very large lumber company in Northern California. And I reached out to Golden State Lumber and asked them to help me put more people to work. And through my relationship with the CEO of that organization, I have been able to create jobs, along with my partner, Justin Paperny. We've been able to create jobs for more than 100 formerly incarcerated people. And we're doing it every day. The only challenge is the people who go through the program, they have to have gone through this Earning Freedom Mastermind course and these other courses that I have created so that people can demonstrate that they truly are on a path to success. And so that's why I wanted to express my appreciation to Golden State Lumber. I also wanted to thank them, and I wanted to let those in our audience know, if you are in the Northern California area and you need any type of lumber or windows or hardware that's associated with the building trades, take a look at our friends at Golden State Lumber, because they're a big sponsor of the Earning Freedom Mastermind program and many other courses that I've created. So very grateful to Golden State Lumber, and I hope that you will be as well. Now let's get back to the episode. And in this episode, I'm talking about awareness. I'm talking about how being aware of opportunities was really the key moving metric that helped me transition my life. And I'll tell you a story. I wrote about it in Earning Freedom, but it is the story of how I began to really advance my career as a published author. It all began when I was still locked inside of the United States Penitentiary in Atlanta. And I read an article in the Wall Street Journal. It was an op-ed piece by a professor from Princeton. His name was John DiIulio. And the title of his article was Let 'Em Rot. And when I read Let 'Em Rot, when I read this article, this was back in early 1990s, around the same time that I earned my undergraduate degree from Mercer University. I read this article and I completely disagreed with it, because Professor DiIulio's argument was that we needed to build more prisons and we needed to have sentences that were longer and we needed to toughen the environment in prisons. And in fact, it led to some legislation that was known as the No Frills Prison Bill that was advanced by a congressman named, I think it was Zimmerman. And it led to a lot of changes in the federal system in the early 1990s. That was really when we were embarking as a nation on this movement toward mass incarceration. And as a scholar from Princeton, John DiIulio was frequently cited in the media for his work. And I wrote to John, and I told him why I disagreed with that article. Now you got to think, this is a professor at Princeton, and he's getting this letter from a guy who's locked inside of the United States Penitentiary, serving a sentence of 45 years. And he could have discounted it, but instead, John wrote me back and said, hey, I agree with everything you wrote. And what I wrote was I disagreed that we should make prisons harsher and sentences longer. Instead, I suggested that we should invest in human beings and create opportunities so every individual can reach his or her highest potential. And he wrote me back and he said he agreed with it. And I'll still remember the day that I got this first envelope, because it slid through my door. They used to deliver mail under the door of the penitentiary cells. And I held this envelope, and it was just something like this, just an envelope like this. But it was one of the first times I had received a letter from a prestigious university like Princeton. And I remember getting it and feeling the embossed, logo of Princeton, and feeling like, wow, I'm really starting to connect with the world right now. I just graduated, and I was telling him that I thought we should invest in more people. And he was writing back and including me in his thought. And I tell you, when I received that message, I didn't feel as though I was in prison. I felt as though I was having this intellectual debate with an Ivy League professor at one of the world's best universities. And so John wrote me back and he said, I disagree. I agree with what you wrote, but he said in an op-ed piece, I can't list all of my work. And he said, but I've written a number of books, and how would you like it if I sent you some of these books and you can review them and see what you think about that? And so I said, awesome. I was really looking forward to finding a mentor and building a relationship and really learning from him. So he sent me his books, and I disagreed with his books, and I wrote him another letter and told him why. So what I'm telling you here is I'm becoming really aware of opportunities to advance my life. And John is becoming aware of me. So now I've got this connection inside of Princeton who is becoming aware of this guy in prison who's studying prisons and writing in what I hope he would consider a methodical way to try and change public perception of why we need to keep building our prison system. He may not have agreed with me, but at least he respected me. And I felt as though I were living a life that was fundamentally different from what my situation called for, where I should have just been serving time. I don't want any of you just serving time. I want you finding opportunities and creating opportunities. And don't wait for opportunities to fall in your lap, but instead become aware of what you can do today to position yourself for a better life tomorrow. So this debate, to continue on the story with John DiIulio, this led to him and I corresponding. And we corresponded for several years. He eventually wrote some extraordinary letters of recommendation for me that I used to my advantage because he suggested that I should. So I did. When I'd write somebody else, I had this endorsement from John, and I had endorsement from, at that time, dozens of people, and eventually hundreds and thousands of people, just as you can have. But here's something that was magical, that I thought was magical about this concept of becoming aware of opportunities and then having the marketplace and the world become aware of you. Several years later, I think it was around 1995 or so, I transferred from the United States Penitentiary in Atlanta to a medium security prison. Again, I wrote about this in my book, Federal Earning Freedom. But I transferred to a federal correctional institution in Bradford, Pennsylvania. It was called FCI McKean. And while I was in McKean, I got to know the warden there quite well. In fact, I was in grad school, and I wrote my master's thesis about the warden. He allowed me to interview him. Why? Because he'd become aware of how hard I was working. And what John did is he brought a group of students from Princeton up to the prison where I was confined in Pennsylvania, in McKean, and I had an opportunity to teach these Princeton students inside of the warden's conference room for a Saturday back in, I think it was 1995. And it was awesome, because here I am serving a 45-year sentence, and yet I'm influencing, I don't know, about 15 or 20 young undergraduate students from Princeton on why we need to improve our nation's prison system, why we need to create more opportunities for people inside so that they too can emerge successfully. Now, at the time, I still had like 18 or 19 years of prison ahead of me, but I had this awareness, and that awareness really grew. I was always focused on building a stronger network. Why? Why would I want to build a stronger network? Well, I can tell you why. Initially, when I walked into prison, I told you I wanted to find 10 people who would believe in me that I didn't know. I didn't know who they were. They didn't know who I was, but I wanted to persuade them to believe in me because I believed if I did that, more opportunities would open. Well, I can tell you that by meeting John and numerous other penologists from around the country, new opportunities opened for me. In fact, I met one, the first one was, I think it was in like 1999, or maybe it was even in 2000, George Cole, who had been a mentor of mine for several years. He was a leading textbook author, and he opened an opportunity for me to publish. So he said, why don't you write a manuscript about your experiences in prison, and I'll pass it along to my publisher, and we'll see if we can't get you a publishing deal. And that led to one of my more important books called About Prison that was used in universities across the country. And I say it was an important book because a lot of other opportunities opened from that. What's going on? I'm aware of opportunities. I'm seizing the moment. I'm taking advantage of them. And then people in society are becoming aware of me. And they're having a vested interest in helping me prepare for success. That's what you've got to do while you're inside there. Now, there's a great myth that exists in every jail and prison that I was ever held, and that is that the best way to serve time in prison is to forget about the world outside and just focus on your prison reputation and doing time inside because nothing's going to matter. But I've got a great piece of guidance for you, at least for you to consider. There's nothing that I have to say that I don't stand behind, that I didn't live by, that I don't feel very passionately about. But I want you just right now, think about everybody you encountered today in the prison. Everybody. Every individual in there who's serving time. And ask yourself, how many of them are ready for prime time? How many of them have been in prison before, got out of prison, and come back to prison? How many? Because you know that it's quite a few. You know that it's more than 50% of the people in your institution have been locked up before and came back. Maybe it's you. Maybe you're somebody who's been locked up before and came back. I'm not making a judgment call against that. I'm not making any judgment call. My job is to try and show you and help you understand that regardless of where you are today, regardless of what bad decisions you've made in the past, you can begin sowing seeds for a better life. But it doesn't happen by accident. You've got to be aware of opportunities that you can seize. And those opportunities exist wherever you are. If you have access to books, you can learn. If you have access to the greatest tool that I have, let me see if I can find one here, a pen, you can learn. You can grow. You can develop a skill set that will help you transform your life. It just doesn't happen by accident. If you want to be a plumber and you say, well, there's no opportunities, I'm in this jail, there's nothing I could do to become a great plumber. That's not necessarily true. If you use the same tools that I used, a pen and a piece of paper, I don't have a paper here, but just a pen and a piece of paper, just with these two tools, you can reach out and write. And I'll tell you a very simple, quick story because we're coming to the end of this episode. I want to tell you this quick story about a guy I met in prison who was going to get out, and he was worried because he'd been in jail for like 20 years, and he didn't know how he was going to find a job. And I said, let's do it together. And we took a pen and a paper, and we just simply wrote letters to contractors in his community. And we asked them, the letter was really quite simple. It said something like this: my name is Jim. I've been in prison for 20 years, and if you're turned off by that, there's no reason to read any further. But I'm getting out in 6 months, and I want to work and provide value for your company. All I'm asking for is an opportunity, and here's what I'm offering. I will come to work for you for 2 weeks for free. You don't pay me a dime. And if after those 2 weeks you don't see me as the guy who was the first person on the job, the last person to leave, the hardest worker there during the entire day, if I am not that person, then I will reach out my hand and I will shake your hand and I will thank you for the opportunity. And we sent that letter out to maybe 40 or 50 contractors. And within a couple of weeks, he had about 5 or 6 contractors who wrote him back and they said, I'd love to meet you. That's what I'm looking for in a guy who's got a real hunger, a guy who's got a real passion to bring value. And if you're that type of a guy, I don't care about your past. I care about your future. So the guy became aware of job opportunities. The job market became aware of him. And when he walked out, he had jobs waiting for him. And that's truly what can change the world. That's truly what can help people emerge more successfully. And it's really the gift that I got from masterminds who inspired me and who taught me and who convinced me to work every single day. As those days turned into weeks, and those weeks turned into months, and those months turned into years, and those years turned into decades. I served 9,500 days in prison, and I never lost sight of this important principle of being aware of my environment and figuring out how I can tap into every potential resource. Every potential resource that would help me emerge successfully. And the harder I worked, the more opportunities opened for me, but simultaneously, the more people in society came into my life and had a vested interest in helping me succeed. And that's what I'd love for you to be thinking about as we conclude this module or this video portion of the Earning Freedom Mastermind course. I want you just to contemplate. If you can persuade 10 people to come into your life and believe in you, the question is, will that help you advance more successfully? Just think of the many ways that it can help you. When you need a reference, Maybe you need a job, and those 10 people, some of them are going to know employers, and they can direct you and give you a recommendation, and that helps so much. So become aware of opportunities that you can seize. Work through the course that I've provided in the Earning Freedom Mastermind course, and seize the moment. Never give up. And that's my message today on awareness, which is the fifth series in our, after you do your prerequisites in our program. I think that's the 7th series of this particular video coursework. But look, I really just want to see you succeed. I want to make sure that when you come out, I've given you everything I possibly can to sow seeds for your own success. And if you're listening to this course or watching this video outside in society, I'm going to ask you, help me be the change that I want to see in the world. Help me reach more people in prison. And how you do it? Really quite simple. Go to iTunes, subscribe to the Earning Freedom podcast. It's free. Rate and review the show, because the more ratings and reviews I receive, the more subscriptions I receive, the more iTunes distributes the show, and the more people we can reach and transform. So that's it for today. I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com, and I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share a little bit more about what I learned from Masterminds. Thank you.